Welcome to Soil to Soul 360. It's Clifton Joseph coming directly from the Different Book List Cultural Center in Toronto. This is a project between the Cultural Center and the African Food Basket. And we're here live at the bookstore in Bathurst Street in downtown Toronto. I have with my guest here somebody who's been involved in so many activities in the Jane-Finch area, in youth groups, in school gardens, health, and activism work, and she's also the CEO of Adda Blooms. Welcome, if you will, please, Abena Offeh-Gyimah.
Thank you so much for welcoming me to the show.
So Ghana, all the way from the motherland of Ghana to Toronto. What was that experience like moving from, I mean, those are thousands of miles, right?
Yes.
What was the cultural shift for you?
So my parents moved here when I was 11 years old, just so I'm turning 11 years old. My dad worked as a mechanical engineer, and he was offered a job in Toronto, I guess, with Ontario Hydro. So he decided to move the family from Ghana to Canada. I guess living in Ghana, we're middle class, and so the transition here wasn't so much of a shock for me necessarily, I guess academically, but I think a part of the shock was the experience of being Black, right? And I know a lot of African immigrants tend to talk about that, is that when you're back home on the continent, everyone around you looks the same. So
Absolutely.
You don't really, you describe yourself according to the ethnic group that you are from. But I guess growing up and then being in middle school, a part of the challenge was that you're not African, you're Black, you know? And that growing up with that identity and trying to understand what does it mean to be Black, what does it mean to be African, what does it mean to now be Canadian, and living those sort of multiple identities have been a challenge. And then also living within an amazing community, the Jane-Finch community. I live in it, grew up in it, went to middle school, high school, York, and seeing the community from a different perspective, and then having people tell you, no, this is what your community looks like, right? Like people define your neighborhood for you, but your experience living in it, it's just completely different.
How do you self-define? Because a lot of people from my generation say are stuck in the idea of Black and never made the transition to African Canadian or what have you. What was your journey to Blackness in terms of what the definition of Blackness is now that you incorporate in terms of meeting Black folks here from all over the world, and how do you define your Black culture here?
That's a challenging question, actually. I'm still in the process of figuring out what that looks like. But I think for me, it starts from the shared experience that we all have because of how we experience the world through our skin color, right? Is a shared experience that we all have being connected to the African continent, right? Is a shared experience that we all have around racism, right? Or colorism. So that's usually where I start, like with those kinds of shared experiences. But I identify as African, I identify as Black, I identify as Ghanaian, from the northern part of Ghana, as Ashanti, identify with all of the above. But I explain it differently depending on the context that I'm in.
And how do you like the experience of living in a city like this, a diverse city? The UN says this is the most diverse city on the planet.
Toronto is interesting. And it's interesting depending on the neighborhood that you're going, you know, and it's interesting depending on the pocket that you're in. So being in Jane-Finch, that's a different experience. Everything's accessible in terms of culturally appropriate food, right? So I could go to different sort of local grocery stores, either a Jane and Eddystone or a Jane and Wilson. And then there are different sort of communities that you go in and you just start, your skin color becomes more visible, right? If you're going into a different neighborhood, you start asking questions. Do I belong here? You know, how will people see me? These are things that you do automatically because of how you have been perceived or because of how you've been told, right, to perceive yourself, or how the media perceives our skin color. So Toronto, yeah, is definitely interesting. And I think depending on the neighborhood that you grew up in, your experience shifts.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
And speaking of experience and neighborhoods and perceptions,
Yes.
Jane-Finch is notorious, is infamous,
Yes.
is famous. A lot of famous people come out of there.
Mm-hmm.
It's gotten better over the years in terms of the rap it gets from the media. But in your own experience, how did you develop a pride in coming from that neighborhood?
I think, so when I was in middle school, actually started in high school, I had to get my 40 hours, you know, the 40 hours volunteer service that you had to do. And I started at a senior's home at the Jane-Finch area. And when I started by volunteer within the community, I had a different sense of how the media perceive the community. There's a lot of activism that goes on within the neighborhood. There's a lot of community groups. There are a lot of people who are invested in Jane-Finch, who live there, who see the community from a different lens, because that is their home. It's a part of the identity. It's a part of how they see the world. And so by volunteering from high school, I had a different sense of what my community was. I had a different investment. I got connected to people who were telling me stories about their lives. It was no longer, oh, there's Abena from Jane-Finch. It was Abena with a family, right? Or it was Abena who wants to graduate from high school. Like, people there have lives. They have stories. They have wishes. They have dreams, right? So people are not just... People live there don't describe themselves by their neighborhood or by their community. They describe themselves by their experiences they have from there. So for me, it started with volunteering within the community, getting to know folks. Pretty much volunteering.
Well, what do people still need to know about the reality of life in an area like Jane-Finch?
Yeah. I think there's a lot of systemic discrimination that definitely continues to happen. Particularly around food, right? For most of us who live in the area, we tend to say that it's a food desert. Access to fresh, affordable food is a challenge. If you look within the community, there's a lot of junk food, right? Junk food is just everywhere.
All over the joints.
But yeah, exactly. But getting access to fresh, healthy, organic, nutritious food, it's not that accessible, right? Within certain communities in Toronto, there's like 3, 4, 5 farmers markets happening. 5 minutes of each other on the weekend. Within our neighborhood, you don't see a lot of farmers markets, right? With a lot of fresh produce. So that's one of the challenge around getting access to affordable, health, fresh, organic food. Yeah.
And I was floored to realize that, told that food is actually generally more expensive in Jane-Finch than most other places around the city. What gives with that?
It actually is. There was a report that was done by the Heart and Stroke, I think in the late, was it somewhere between 2006 and 2008? I don't clearly remember the year, but yeah, and they were comparing fresh produce within the area and found out that fresh produce is more expensive within the Jane-Finch area. Community organizations like JFAB, so Jane-Finch Action Against Poverty, the Black Creek Food Justice Network, have also done extensive research, extensive work, gone into different grocery stores, and have done comparisons on fresh food. And we found out that there are fresh food within our community is more expensive than other areas, yeah. And the quality is also terrible, right? We also don't get the best of the fresh produce that's coming in.
Mm-hmm. So you moved from volunteerism to activism. Yes. Explain that shift.
It started a few years ago. So mine was really around health. I developed a ton of allergies. I couldn't consume dairy, I couldn't consume fish. Suddenly I became allergic to a whole bunch of foods, and everything I ate, I would react to it. And so around that time, I got really terrified. I ended up at the hospital. Every single pore on my face would inflame. I couldn't be in the sun for too long, and it doesn't make sense because I'm from Ghana,
wow,
so how can I not?
You're like the woman in the
right?
bubble.
Yeah, exactly. So I couldn't actually be in the sun for too long, and I still can't for a period. So I could be in it, but not for too long, because every single pore inflames, and I swell up. And so I thought I was gonna die. Sounds ridiculous. A few years ago, and I thought I need to learn how to grow my own food, or else like this is gonna get worse. And so I came across an ad advertising for farmers, youth farmers at the Black Creek Farm. And I thought, this is my chance to learn how to grow my own food so I can live, you know? And so I applied and learned how to grow my own food. And from there, I learned about food justice. So that was really my introduction to food, and learned about food justice. And
what is food justice?
Food justice is looking at the injustices within the food system. So really around who gets access to land, right? Who gets to own land? Who gets to farm? You know, how is fresh food distributed? You know, which communities or which people get access to more fresh food and who doesn't, right? Who owns land and who doesn't own land ownership, and who can easily go into a rural community and say, hey, I'm here to farm, and who can't just get up and go into a rural community and farm. So looking at a lot of the inequalities within the food system.
So when you started then, you were like, you must have been ecstatic then just to be able to see your food grow. That,
yes.
That experience of actually getting your hands dirty.
It blew me away. I think for me, the most amazing thing, and it still is up to this day, is just grabbing a seed and putting it in the earth and then watching an entire plant. I'm just like, how does it's just amazing. Like, how do you get food from this one seed? It blew me away. So it was a healing process as well, because I was doing it with other youth. So it just wasn't me, it was myself, Zakisha, Kevin, Alia, it was 6 other youth, and Damien Ajoha was the program coordinator. So it was incredible to go through that process of learning about the food system, the history of food, who has access to food, who doesn't have access to food, healthy food, learning about, you know, the rate of diabetes in our communities, right? Cholesterol, blood pressure, all these other things, yeah, as a result of not getting access to healthy food.
So then you move from all of this food production for yourself. How did you deal with that part of it? Because you can grow, what did you grow and what did you do with it? Because you can't eat it all, right? No,
we grew, we did kale, we did eggplant, because we learned a lot about culturally appropriate foods. We did okra, bok choy, tomatoes. We did a lot. Herbs, sage, mint, lemon balm. It was incredible. Everything we grew was added. So the farm has a CSA, like a community-supported agriculture, that people purchase food ahead. So everything we grew was added to that. And we also, as youth, got access to take some fresh food home. Yeah, it was amazing, amazing. I'm telling you. Yes.
But farming ain't easy, right? So there are 2 ways it can go generally. One is that you fall in love with it and you just like immerse yourself into it, get your hands and feet dirty and everything, and have the consistency. Or you can get frustrated with the negative aspects of it, all of these weeds coming up, and bam, when's that okra gonna grow, and so on. Was it just working with a group that gave you that idea of longevity, that we can weather this storm? How did you get over that tough part?
Yes, I think when I started farming, I started learning a lot around within the province and within Canada, the shift towards organic agriculture. Outside of my work at the farm, I was also doing readings around what was happening on the food scene, hence to pursue my PhD around Black farming history in Canada. So I became very interested, because for me, my first point was I needed to heal myself from my allergies, so I needed to learn how to do that.
And did you? I assume you did during that period.
Yes, I learned quite a lot. I'm still learning how to heal my allergies. It's still ongoing. There's a lot of environmental factors that play a role. And so yes, for me, it was learning how to grow my own food was very important to me. And then 2, learning about the history of food just really shifted me. Like, there was a lot of hurt to learn that, you know, our people were brought into the States to grow food, you know, and that history of the growing food and of trying to escape from that bondage, from that life. And also learning that currently we don't have access to land, right? We don't have a lot of access to growing food, but also what it meant for Black people to grow food, right? It's different from other cultures growing food. And a lot of young people don't want to grow food because of what it means, right? For Blackness on the field to grow food. For a lot of people, it felt like, is it enslavement again? You know, that, slavery, right? And that trauma lives within us. Exactly. You're like, I want to do something cooler, right? For a lot of young people. And so for me, I started doing a part of that research, and then I became more interested around what is happening on the African continent, right? So what is happening in Ghana around, you know, farming, organic food, and all that stuff. And so I started doing more research. I started contacting some community organizations in Ghana, and I learned that a lot of the indigenous foods were declining. And
in Ghana itself too?
In Ghana, yeah. A lot of natural,
yes, McDonald's
ancestral.
is all over the joint.
Exactly, right? Yeah. A lot of these food chains are on the continent.
But rewind for a little bit though, because then you move from volunteering to actually working, officially working at the farm, in this case, Black Creek Community Farm.
Yes.
How did that then give you more energy and impetus to do some of the other work you're doing now with Adda Blooms in terms of contacting the continent and actually doing commerce between both places? Yeah.
I have to say, honestly, it's a spiritual calling. I don't know if it makes sense.
You got to explain that
but
to
it's really...
you got to explain that
I don't know. For me, like, I felt like I was called to do this work. You know, I was called to do work around food, farming, growing natural foods, preserving indigenous foods. I don't know, I was just immersed in it. You know, everything just seemed right for me and in where I was around that period. But like I said, it was really learning about the legacy, like our legacy of food and our relationship to food and farming and what was happening around food, right? And a lot of this genetically modified food, genetically modified seeds. Even in Ghana, the past few years, there has been a lot of debate around whether GMO seeds should be allowed. And what does it mean when farmers start using, you know, GMO seeds? It means now food sovereignty comes into question, because if you're a farmer and you can't save your seed, then you become dependent on whoever is providing seeds for you. So learning a lot of these historical contexts for me was the fuel. I was like, this can't happen. We need to get access to land. We need to be able to grow our own food.
Well, it's ironic what has happened with black farmers, and I know you've done a lot of research towards your PhD in terms of black farmers in this country, Canada. The irony is that we come from being brought over to these places to farm specifically, done that, enriched all Europe and North America, everywhere, including Canada, and now we had farms, a lot of farms. You go to places like Buxton, Dresden, Cornwall, you know, you name it.
Wilberforce, Queenbush, those areas.
Outside of the Barrie area, there were like a lot of black folks who came here from the States, from Cincinnati especially, the brothers who fought for the, fought back in the war, 1812, got a lot of lands out in Huronia County and so on. But up until 1945, 1949, they all got moved out of there, taxes. How did we lose all of this land that we had as black farmers going back historically?
I think when you look in the books, a lot of the challenge was really around, one, financial support, and two, it was really racism. Let's be honest, that's really what it is. So recently I was looking at the Queenbush story, if I can share this with you.
Please do.
And so they had come from the States, settled in Queenbush, and they were literally for a month.
Where is Queenbush?
Queenbush is around outside of the Hamilton area.
Okay. Yep.
So yeah, all those sort of Wilberforce settlements, yes, those neighborhoods. And these farmers were literally digging the soil with their hands, clearing it, trying to plant potatoes and anything they can to eat. According to the law around that time, if you could clear the land within a certain time and within certain perimeters, it was yours. They had done what was required by the law. And then at night, the surveyor would come in and change the perimeters, right, of the space. And it was like, well, you can't meet the perimeters anymore, so the land will be taken from you. You know, eventually they were asked to pay certain amount for the land, and they couldn't, right? So like you said, and you know, a lot of the soldiers who had fought in the War of 1812 were giving lands, but then there were taxes. And if you couldn't afford the taxes anymore to pay, then you lost your land, right? So there were a lot of these systemic discrimination that played a role in how a lot of black farmers lost their land. But if you look at the Elgin Boxton case in the mid-1800s, the story started with the Reverend William, right? So he married his wife in the States, who had about 15 slaves. When his wife passed away, he was with the Presbyterian Church. He felt very uncomfortable leaving the slaves in U.S. because of that condition in the 1800s. So through the Presbyterian Church, he was able to get acres of land in Elgin Boxton, and he was able to bring the 15 slaves over. Got access to education, they could farm freely. Nobody else could buy land within that Elgin Boxton area for a 10-year period unless you were a black person. And so there was support in that case that allowed the Elgin Boxton area to be successful for a very long time. And I think currently even the challenge for a lot of us who want to get back into farming is the finances, right? It's not just about getting access to land, but it's the input that comes from
what
being able
you
to
need
farm.
to do, all the equipment you need, and
exactly.
Because back in those days, where you had self-sustaining black communities like Buxton, like Dresden, and Cornwall and Chatham and so on, these were self-contained communities that had their own mills, their own schools, basically taking care of total business. And we move from that now to where we're so estranged from the land. How do we get back to it?
And also a part of that in that time period was that people started moving away, right, for jobs. So aside from systemic discrimination, which also caused that, people started moving away for jobs, and other folks moved back to the States because they wanted to be reconnected, you know, to their family and friends. I think currently there are young people in the city that want to learn how to farm, but the process is how. Like, how do we get back to it? You know, who do I go to? How do I start? How do I get access to land? And a lot of that goes back to the narrative, right? There is the narrative of African Food Basket. There are so many, the Black Farmers Collective that are doing work. And a part of that is, I think, it's that intergenerational connection and that intergenerational relationship is the older folks reaching out and saying, hey, for the younger folks who want to farm, this is the space, this is the connection, this is the conversation, this is the storytelling. You know, and for the younger folks to also be ready and willing to learn from the older generation. But a lot of that is around access to space, access to land, access to finances. But for me, it starts with the storytelling. And I think a part of that is that in our community, we still carry the trauma, right? There's a lot of trauma that we carry around being able to, you know, heal from a lot of the pain. Because even the narratives of food injustices, it's hard. It's hard to have that conversation sometimes. To say, I can't come to the table today because I don't have a token, you know, or I can't come today because, do you have food, right? So the everyday realities of people's struggles and trying to live makes it a bit challenging.
And I guess, too, that we have to maybe change our own ways that we perceive the history of slavery, because part of the problem I know in the Caribbean, the areas I'm from, but no young person wants to go in no hot sun. Because they have the memory of all of that. It's why, for instance, I don't like to watch slave movies. Don't care who's doing it or from what angle, because there's some things endemic to them. One, there's going to be some raping. Two, there's going to be somebody who run away and get their fingers or hands chopped off. Three, somebody's going to get killed by some dogs. And there's going to be all kind of atrocities. I don't know, you can't tell the stories without telling these
It's very painful, right? And when you watch these films, when you tell these stories, I think a part of that is also like helplessness. You're like, what can I do? What do I do with this narrative and this story? Like, it's sitting in me, it's sitting in my spirit, in my body. What do I do with it, you know? And I think that helplessness, it's like, what are the next steps, you know? How do we move forward from these trauma? How do we heal? What does that look like? You know?
Well, let's talk a bit about culturally specific food and your concept of ancestral foods. Of course, you move to a new country, you want to eat the new foods and so on, right? You know, you take your lunch to school and you got all your old folks' food there. Everybody got their little sandwich and wondering what's all these smells and so on.
You have your okra stew with you and your bananas.
So, of course, it's comforting, right? But beyond the idea of comfort and familiarity, what exactly are the important points about culturally specific foods and ancestral food in the case of Africans?
I think one of the things that also drew me to ancestral foods was looking at the fact that we're getting sick, right? I'm going to speak within the Ghanaian community. There were a lot of illnesses that you wouldn't hear someone was having. It's like someone died from like throat cancer, you know, stomach cancer. It was just a lot of illnesses that you wouldn't hear someone having back in Ghana or back on the continent. And so for me, it was like, what are we eating? You know, we're not eating the okra anymore. We're not eating the eggplant as much, right? We've shifted more to eating the burgers and the fries and the refined sugars and the carbonated drinks and all these foods that are harming us. And so for me, it became a matter of how do we eat more? It's not so much how do we eat like thousands of years old, but how do we eat more natural foods, right? How do we eat more organic foods? How do we eat more foods in the raw state? Because ancestral foods is really eating foods that are not processed. So natural foods that are not processed, wholesome food, whole foods, right? Foods that are not processed. And so how do we do that? A lot of these foods have become the ingredient. It's like baobab is the ingredient, okra is the ingredient. Our ancestors, those were not ingredients. Those were the food. You know, okra was steamed as the food, and you would just eat it.
See?
You know, you just take baobab and put it in your drink, and in your water, and you drink it, or you add it to your millet. But we have shifted away from those foods.
Even on the continent.
Exactly. And our taste palettes have shifted. One, because of the nature of food now. Two, because we're all busy working, modern life, everyone is busy, we want food on the go. But, you know, food is healing and food is life. And so we tend to forget that whatever we put in our bodies, what we get out. It's connected to our mental health, our spiritual health, you know, our mind, our way of being, our way of living. And so I think when we look in our communities, we look at the rates of diabetes, right? High blood pressure, cholesterol, all these things. And where does it come from? We look back into our communities and we look at all the foods that are available for us. There's pizza in every corner. There's fries in every corner. That's what we're consuming.
Well, how are we losing that battle, though? Because for years now, at least decades, we have been told about what foods are bad for you. Salt is bad, sugar is bad, all these carbonated drinks are bad, pizza is bad. I mean, all of these foods that we know are bad, and we've been told are bad, yet we still consume them in huge numbers.
And my question, what were your ancestors eating years ago? That's where I would start. What were they eating? They were eating eggplant. Why were they eating eggplant? They were eating okra. They were eating millet, plantain, yams, cassava, right? For me, it's tied to our DNA. It's tied to who we are, right? We all don't have to eat the exact same way because foods have to be culturally appropriate. But we have to eat foods that are wholesome, you know, that are whole foods. And a bit of the challenge, as we mentioned earlier, is that within certain communities, we don't have access to that food, right? Within certain intersections, we don't have access to the food. So how do we get access to the food? You know, or how do we, those of us who own food businesses, how do we make these foods accessible to folks within our community, you know, and also affordable?
How do we?
Ongoing question. Yeah.
You're called the queen of the bobo.
I don't know if I'm queen of the baobab,
some people
but
call you
yes, I'm still learning. You know, I'm still learning. I think.
Tell us about that.
Yes. Okay. So going to Ghana, I'm from Ghana. I've said born, raised in Ghana. Came here when I was 11 years old. Went back. Been back a few times, but 3 years ago, I specifically went with Tinashe. It's been with the African Food Basket. So he actually came with me to Ghana to do a bit of research and work around organic food in the northern part of Ghana. And through that research, we learned a lot that, you know, a lot more farmers are using agrochemicals within your foods because it's free, it's given to them. You're not trained on how to use it. It's going in the streams, it's going in the foods. A lot of the indigenous food, as I mentioned before, we're declining. And looking in North America and working at Black Creek Farm and also seeing that here there's a shift now towards organic growing. It didn't make sense to me because to think of Africa as natural, you know, natural, organic. It's
supposed to be.
It's supposed to be. So what's happening to our foods on the continent? It's killing us. And so I thought I need to do something about that, right? And at that time I was pursuing my PhD. And so I decided to put my PhD on hold and to pursue this. And so Adda Blooms is really around how do we create a market for African natural and indigenous foods. And so I started with the baobab because the baobab, it's a symbol of the continent, you know? It's a tree, exactly. So this is a fruit. It's lived thousands of years old, you know? And for a tree that's lived thousands of years old, that continued to produce a fruit, for me, that blew me away.
How do you eat that?
So traditionally, they will take that fruit and just kind of hit it on the ground or on a stone or on a rock and then open it up. And this is what it looks like inside. So you could just, literally, they could just eat it. So you grab one, and then kids just eat it. It's a snack.
And it's got a seed in it?
It's got a seed in it, and this is what the seed looks like. So this is the baobab seed. It kind of looks like beans, in a sense. It's hard, but it has a citrus taste to it. Yeah.
And then a milky.
A milky,
It's like a powdery milky. But crunchy at the same time too?
Exactly. Yeah.
What are some of this nutritional?
Oh my gosh, it's high in vitamin C. It has more vitamin C they can get in orange. It's an antioxidant. So out of all the superfoods, it has the highest antioxidants. And you know, we need antioxidants to fight inflammation, right? A lot of all our illnesses are coming from mucus and inflammation. And so we need anti-inflammatory foods to kill that. Delicious, eh? It's also very high in fiber, which is great for our gut health, right? All diseases start from your gut. And so your immune system is connected to your gut, your mental health is connected to your gut, your skin health is connected to your gut. This is gut health food, right? It's really high in fiber. It has what they call a prebiotic. So a prebiotic, it's pretty much eating food that will feed the good germs in your stomach to multiply, to help you digest food. Yeah.
I have about 5 of the seeds in my mouth now.
Right, exactly.
do I spit them out or do I crunch them up?
I would say spit it out and save it. And attempt to grow your own baobab tree at home.
You can in this climate.
You can grow it outside. You can grow it in your room at home. You can create a hot condition for it. And maybe you can have a small baobab tree in your room. But we can't grow it outside. Maybe in a greenhouse somewhere. We can try that. Yeah.
Great.
Amazing.
But again, it's a big move.
Yes.
Getting into business anyway.
Yes.
Import, export. And you're getting from Toronto to Ghana.
Ghana,
That's
yes.
a good bit of distance.
Yes.
Takes a little bit of money,
Yes.
lots of planning,
Yes.
some chutzpah,
Yeah.
and some gumption.
Lots of gumption. Lots.
You must have sat down with yourself and maybe your family and friends and say, you know what, I'm going to do this.
Yeah. You know, it was...
How did you convince yourself?
I loved doing my PhD because the research was looking at black farming history. And when I went to Ghana, I think being on the land, being on the soil, knowing all the history that I knew and seeing baobab trees die, like there was an immediate call. Like, how can a tree that's lived for thousands of years old die? Like, what's going on, you know? You know, our natural foods like dawa dawa, right? Bambara beans, these are all natural foods that here we call them superfoods. There, they're normal foods, but here it's like, oh my gosh, I'll pay $20 for like just one, because there's healing and it's great and its nutritional properties are amazing. Sorry, I'm just gonna take this out. And I think for me, seeing the decline of it, there was an immediate call to action, like something has to be done. And I didn't have the money, I didn't know anything about import and export. I don't come from a business background. But I went into it anyways.
You had the passion?
I had the passion, willingness to learn, network, connect, and do it, really. And I think my reason to do it was greater than the money I had in my account. So
well, how long ago was this, by the way?
It's been 1.5 years.
Oh, fresh?
Yeah.
Just out of the oven?
Out of the oven, yes.
So how's it been going, though? Because, I mean, you know, they say it takes about a couple of years to establish a business, and with this kind of long-range business, it might even be more.
Yes.
Where are you in that curve of comfortability?
It's been a challenge. So initially, when I brought the baobab powder here, I started with the Afro-Caribbean
These are all
market.
your products, by the way?
These are all my products here.
Adda Blooms.
Adda Blooms, yes. So initially, when I brought the baobab powder, I went to the Afro-Caribbean market. That was my first launch a summer ago, 2018 summer. And it was amazing. People purchased it. They loved it, how it tasted like. But a bit of the challenge was that people were not sure how to use it because it's not a familiar product.
Question right now. Do
so
you put it in shakes? Do you put it in
you
salad?
put it in water. You could put it in a smoothie. You could put it in a juice. You could put it in coconut water. You could sprinkle on your salad. And so I started juicing. My dad has been juicing ever since I was like 12 years old. He's an avid juicer. He's into health and healing and yoga and all that stuff. That's who I learned all these things from. And so I thought, why not? So I started juicing at the market. I started taking cold pressed juices to the market. I'll add baobab to it, and people loved it. It was like an immediate hit.
Nice.
So I was like, why don't I just launch and start juicing and add baobab to it? So I started that, and last year it became a huge hit. So people were buying Adda Blooms cold pressed baobab juices. It was incredible. But once again, the challenge in business is around sustainability, supply chain management. You know, how do you keep buying organic apples, you know, or cucumbers when it's not in season anymore? Can you buy one for $4? And will the customer, you know,
and how much is
pay
that,
for
that juice going to cost?
Exactly, you know.
Is that a $12 one?
Exactly. So it was a question: how much does it cost to bring healthy food to your community, you know, or to your customers? And it's just learning about the food business. It's a challenge. It's a rewarding business if you have passion for it, but it's also a challenging business around labor. You know, how do you pay adequately for labor? You know, how do you hire and pay people well? You know, to work with you. But yeah, also even learning supply chain management with the baobab, right? How it was harvested, how it was preserved. So I went to Ghana recently. I spent entire February and some parts of March just learning. So the women's collective that I buy the baobab from, you know, how they harvest it, how they preserve it, how they source it, how they mill it, you know, all that process. Because I wanted to have a clear understanding of the process, not just for myself as a business, because ethical sourcing is very important for me, but also for my customers. So when people ask me questions, I'm like, I know where this comes from, you know? Like, I know it comes from this place and this village in Ghana. And
hello.
yes.
Sorry.
Yes.
The nitty-gritty of it all, right?
Yes.
So you hooked up with a women's collective. So
Yes.
you have people, you have a source they're going. I assume you're working with them and ethical and fair trade and so on.
Yes.
But again, you're long distance. You're not there all the time.
Exactly.
So how do you, what's the liaison? Who's your middle person? How do you work that kind of distance?
They do everything. The coordinator of the organization does everything. You purchase the product, she gets everything prepared, and then she sends it directly to the shipping company. And then the shipping company then sends it over here to me in Canada. So a part of the challenging process, even for myself, I was having a conversation with a friend the other time, and I was asking this question, you know, like, what does it mean for Africans to sell natural foods, right? What does it mean? Okay, let me rephrase that question. What does it mean for me to go back home, you know, and take natural foods and also sell it, you know? Is it selling out on the continent, right? Because when other folks do it, then it's a problem, right? But what does it mean for us to do it? Like, even though I'm ethically sourcing, what does it mean by ethically sourcing? Am I really ethically sourcing, right? These are challenges and questions that I have to also ask myself within that process, you know, of doing this work. And this business.
So, you bring them here.
Yes.
Do you have a physical building? No?
No, I don't have a physical building. So initially I was
you go out to farmers markets, you go out to events?
I go out to farmers market events. I use social media, Instagram to market it. Also our website. Just different ways of marketing. Social media, events. I started with the Afro-Caribbean market. So any events that come up or invitations that we get as a business, we go, we have conversations, we do lunch and learns, we do talks, and we talk about ancestral foods, foods that heal, how do you incorporate baobab or tiger nuts into your food. So we also make snacks from it. So I make tiger nut clusters, I make baobab bites.
I had some of those, man, at the event up at the farm, the dinner at the farm last year. Tiger nuts, I mean, a lot of people wouldn't know of tiger nuts, and they also have a very interesting taste. Yes. Because you bite into them, it's like nuttish. Then there's a little kind of bittery thing to it. Yes. And then behind that bit now there's like a sweet, sugary taste to it. So what is it? What is tiger nuts? So tiger nut is actually not a nut, and that's the harder part to explain. It's a root crop. So it's a tuber. It grows underneath the soil. So like peanuts too? Peanuts grow underneath the soil? Yeah. So it's very high in fiber. It's a great alternative for milk. So for those who are lactose intolerant, you can soak a few tiger nuts, blend it, add some dates, vanilla to it, vanilla extract. Bam, you got milk for it. You can just have it as a snack. It's absolutely delicious. And it's also great for women that are breastfeeding. It helps promote breast milk as well. And it's great for your digestion health as well. So it's used a lot in Ghana, and it's used as an aphrodisiac on the continent. Brothers would love that.
Yes.
What are some of your other products, and what's the strategy in terms of the kinds of products you're able to bring? I know, for instance, some folks were talking about bringing up Ghanaian black rice, which is I've never seen myself. But
northern rice,
So. But
I brought some northern rice.
When they looked at the costs and the distribution, they abandoned the project. They thought it was just too expensive to bring from Ghana here, and didn't have a dedicated market. Yeah. How are you finding the reception to your products?
I think a part of the challenge is finding a sustainable supply chain. And so going directly on the continent and buying directly from the farmers, right? If you're buying from a third party or a second person or middle person who's buying from the farmer, then that's an additional cost. but I find it's a little bit easier to buy it directly from the farmer. In that case, you're explaining what the production process should look like, what quality assurance should look like, right? What health and safety should look like. Then you have that one-on-one relationship around what you're looking for the Canadian market, right? Or for the international market. Another component to doing ancestral foods or indigenous food is marketing. So education.
Of course.
A lot of education. What is this food? What does it look like? How can you use it? How can you preserve it? So a lot of the content that I have like here, it's really around education. So what is Boabab? How do you use it? What is tiger nuts? How do you use it? A lot of our social media is really education based. So
and
what are
and
the
they
benefits?
Can get you on all platforms.
Yes.
And it's
Yep.
Adda, is it AddaBlooms.com?
Yes, AddaBlooms.com.
So what are some of the other products that you have, or do you specialize in just these
Yes.
two?
So currently I have the tiger nuts and the baobab. So I do the cold pressed juices. We juice. People can order juices from our website. All our juices are made. They're delivered to you, to your home, where you could pick them up from our different locations that we have. And then we make snacks from it as well. So we make snack bites. They're all allergy free, preservative free. You could go on our website, look at our snacks, and you could purchase our snacks as well. So in the near future, next year, we're looking at bringing in more products as well.
How optimistic are you that what seems to be a surge in black folks gravitating towards veganism, shakes, smoothies, juice bars, and so on? Because it seems like it's happening. There are more restaurants and more of these places popping up.
Yep.
So on the face of it, it does look like it's happening. How are you optimistic? What's your assessment of that? Is it sustainable? Is it growing? Is it declining? What's going on?
It's growing. I think a lot more people are becoming conscious around what's in my food. You know, they ask, what's in my food? What do you have in it? What are the ingredients? Where did you get it from? The last time I went to a restaurant, I always make a joke. I'm a vegetarian, but I always make a joke with
But you eat
servers.
some pig sometimes?
Yeah, no. I usually ask
some
them.
pork
I'm like, the chicken that you have here, like, how was it raised? Was it happy? You know, I just make those jokes. Or I'm like, with a cow. Or if it's beef on the menu, I ask, I'm like, was it happy? You know, was it grass-fed? And then usually the server has a confused look at me, and they're like, oh, you vegans, don't come here. Or you vegetarians, you're not welcomed here.
You crop murderers, you
right,
vegetable
exactly.
murderers.
But I think people are becoming more conscious around what's in my food. You know, is it healthy? Is it safe? Is it artificial flavors? Is it preservative? You know, will I get cancer? Will I get sick? Will I die? And these are valued questions. And so I think there is a growing industry. A lot more people who are concerned about your health are becoming vegetarians. They're becoming vegans. So it's a growing market. And becoming a vegetarian or vegan means that you are looking for alternative, right? So you're looking for alternative milk, which is nut-based milk. I mean, tiger nut is not a nut, but you can make milk from tiger nut, right? You're looking for foods that are high in protein. So you can get your moringa, you can get your baobab, right? You're looking for foods that are high in iron, right? Tiger nuts. And so, yeah, I think it's definitely a growing market. The challenge is the education around ancestral foods.
And of course, the squaring away that concern about what's in your food and
Yes.
thrust towards organicness, but looking at that higher price line.
Yes.
How do you, it's a question I ask everybody I'm dealing with in this program, how do you get people used to the idea that, you know what, all that money for all that organic kale when I can get all this non-organic kale down here for like a tenth of the price?
Yeah. I think when people in business, people are looking for transparency and authenticity, right? So when people see, recently I went to Ghana, I did videos being in Ghana. When people see that you're committed to getting them food that will not hurt them, food that will not cause them sickness, food that will not cause them disease, they're willing to support you because they know you're committed, right? To making sure that you're bringing them healing and healthy food. And the moment you're transparent about your business, people are willing to support you because they know it costs to produce.
And the health effects.
And the health effects, definitely. There are people, so many folks are looking to heal. A lot of us are sick, man. The food out there is killing us.
I'm telling you.
It's killing us.
Tastes
Tastes great. Tastes great, but it's killing us for a moment. For a moment, but it's killing us, right? And the more you eat healthy, natural food, your taste buds also shift towards a lot more of the healthier foods. Yeah.
It's like drinking cranberry juice,
Yes.
and then going and buying an actual organic cranberry thing. Oh man, you want to spit
And
that
the
thing out.
difference.
And
Yeah, the difference.
The other example is that I used to get sorrel from a friend of mine down the road on Vaughan, right? And I'm by this bottle, and I'm like, hold on, $9 to get that thing. Let me go
Yes.
and get me something at the store and so on. That's when I realized the amount of sugar you got to put into
Yes.
that
Yep.
sorrel to get that particular
Yes.
taste that they market.
Yep.
So now when I do it, I do one with the sugar thing
Yeah.
and one without, so
Yeah.
that I'm trying to wean myself off of
Yes.
off a little bit.
Yeah.
But how do you define success, Abena, in the next couple of years? I mean, you're year and change into the business model.
Yeah.
How do you define success in this business that you've chosen over the next 3 to 5 years, let's say?
That's a good question. I actually haven't really thought about that. But I think one of my challenging things has been around supply chain management, right? How do I source food ethically? How do I pay the women's collectives that I work with well and fair? How do I, with the snacks and stuff that I make, how do I make things more local, right? Because the shift is to also eat more local foods. So
Yep.
even though foods are being brought from Ghana and these are ancestral foods, a lot of the ingredients that we make them with, like cold pressed juices and stuff like that, are made mostly with local ingredients. So I think for me, success would be being able to work with local farmers that we purchase food from, in an ethical, sustainable way that provides them with a healthy and fair livelihood. That's one of the ways that I would define success, right? Being able to impact people's livelihood in a positive, equitable way, specifically the people that we buy foods from, a lot of the foods. And the second component is that people who eat our foods are actually impacted. They are healed, they feel happy, they feel healthy. There are many people that recommend other people. We do juice cleanses. People do a juice cleanse for 5 days. You're like, oh my God, I need to call a few friends, you know? And a lot of the business that we have received has been based on recommendation and references. People coming and they just recommend us.
Word of mouth, man.
You can't, man. You know, and so people recommend us. We're like, okay, you get a snack for recommending us. And so when people eat our foods and they feel happy, they're healed, you know, their digestion is great, they can sleep well, that's success. That's success to me.
And I know
Yeah.
during the years that you were at Black Creek Farm, they have been
Yes.
promoting the idea of bringing your family down on the weekend, Saturday,
Yes.
Sunday, and you have your
Yes.
picnic on the farm. But you're having an ancestral brunch at the farm,
Yes.
June 9th, Sunday.
Yes.
Tell us some more about that and
Yes.
what we can expect from that.
Yes. So one of the things that I've been getting a lot lately, especially on social media, is people asking, what is ancestral food? You know, what is Afro-Indigenous food? What is all these terminologies that people are throwing around, you know? And I think for me, I want to highlight that ancestral eating is tied to our DNA, right? It's a way that our ancestors ate. It was close to nature, it was wholesome, it was whole foods. And the ancestral brunch is really a conversation around how can we eat more natural foods? How can we incorporate these foods in our everyday life, right? It's not asking people to dramatically shift how they eat, but it's a question of how can you incorporate a lot more of these foods into your everyday life. So we're gonna have drumming, we're gonna enjoy green plantain, you know, from Ghana. Well, not the plantain directly from Ghana, but it's a recipe from Ghana. Yes, the way it's prepared. Green plantain and stew is called inkontomire. So green plantain and contomere stew. We're gonna have injera, cold pressed juices, tiger nut drinks. We're gonna have an ingredient table. So all the foods that you're going to be eating, there's gonna be an ingredient table where you're gonna see it. It's really just gonna be a day. It's gonna be an experience, you know, of what does it mean to eat ancestral foods, and just sharing that with folks that will be coming.
What times and
yes, so
is
it's
it
at
the
the
cost? Is it
yeah,
all free
so
like
yes, there's
1834 in the British Empire?
So there is a cost to it. I mean, yes, there's a cost to it. It's at the Black Creek Community Farm. It's on a Sunday, June
4920
9th.
Jane Street, just south of Steeles.
Exactly. 4929 Jane Street.
Yeah.
Yes, Sunday, June 9th, 1 to 5 o'clock. And you could buy the tickets on Eventbrite. So it's $30 for early bird. And then after next 2 weeks, it goes to $40. So it covers the cost of drumming, facilitators, food, the space, and really just coming in to have this conversation and to really experience it, you know? So it's really bringing the continent to the farm. Yeah.
Beautiful, beautiful. And for those people who watch this and want to come, how do they get tickets? And
they can find us. They can visit us on Instagram, where they can get more information, Adda Blooms, ADDA Blooms, or they can just go to Eventbrite, and then you can buy the ticket from there.
Well, I want to thank you so much. Any last words for the people out there? Because as we say, more and more black folks are getting into veganism, healthy foods, organic foods, etc. But not everybody's there yet, right?
Yes.
There's an energy towards it, but there might still be a few encumbrances. What do you say to folks in terms of, it's like you start going to a gym and they tell you it's a lifestyle change. It's not just like come in and do your thing, but it's water, it's the food you eat and so on. So is it a lifestyle change, eating healthier, or can you do it incrementally and still eat some of your other stuff?
Still getting your burger and your fries? I think, yes, it is a lifestyle change, right? It's a mental, physical, and spiritual shift, right? For me, the food I eat is not just I'm eating to eat, right? I'm eating for energy. I'm eating so I can pursue my purpose. For me, that's how deep food is. Food is not just, oh, this tastes good, let me just eat this burger. No, I'm eating so I can have the energy to pursue my purpose, to do the thing that I have been called to do in this earth, right? And I think a lot of us are not used to living consciously, right? We're not used to living awarenessly, because we're so pulled out by so many modern day life, all the things that we have to do, all the things that we have to pursue. And so shifting towards veganism or vegetarianism is going to take time. It's a shift. It's not just something that happens overnight. It's not just something that happens tomorrow. It's a shift. And I think a part of that is really acknowledging, what do I eat? What do I put in my body? But most importantly, what kind of life do you want for yourself, right? What kind of life do you want for yourself? What kind of lifestyle do you want for yourself? What things do you want to pursue in life? And if eating a healthy lifestyle will help you get there, great. You know, if eating a burger and a fries will help you get there too, then that's up to you. But there are also health implications, right? So I think for me, the question becomes, what kind of life do you want for yourself? You know, how long do you want to live? How healthy do you want to live? How happy do you want to live? And if the answer to those questions is a healthy lifestyle with a little bit more fruits and vegetables and ancestral foods, then why not? Right?
Which is exactly what I'm asking you out there. How happy do you want to live? How healthy do you want to live? What kind of ancestral foods you want? So June 9th at the Black Creek Farm in Toronto, Jane and Steele's from 1 till 5, you say?
Yes.
It's happening. This is the CEO of Adda Blooms. Right here tonight with us. Thank you so much for it. It's Clifton Joseph, ladies and gentlemen, coming from a different booklist cultural center in Toronto, and the CEO of Adda Blooms is here, Abena Offeh-Gyimah.
Yes, thank you so much for inviting me. Thank you so much for bringing me to this conversation. It's been an honor.
Excellent.
It's an amazing space. I love this place.
It's beautiful, man.
It's beautiful.
Marvelous like Marvin, wonderful like Stevie.
Yes. Thank you, Clifton.
Thank you so much, Abena.
Yes.